This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. And, mate, the rugby weekends are starting to get busy again.
How's it, Brett? Listen, let's talk about food for a second.
Yep.
I know you've had jambalaya in your life at some point and maybe some crawfish etouffee, but the quintessential Cajun dish is gumbo. And it's a swampy morass of goodness. And the key to gumbo, as you might know, is the roux, R-O-U-X. It's this kind of mud that they create. Start with that. If you have a good roux, you're going to have a good gumbo. And instead of the holy trinity of onions and carrots and celery, if you stuck with, normal soups, Cajun is peppers, onions, and celery. And so I'll jump now to the Rec, where Bath was playing this weekend. It's a beautiful, well-heeled hostility kind of place with the beautiful trees and the decapitated castles. And there was a moment in the 40-13 hammering of Sale that I saw Quinn Roux and his jersey right next to Guy Pepper. And I literally jumped out of my chair and said, now this is a gumbo of a match. I went a long way for that one. I'm sorry.
There was a long run up for that. That is a very, very long run up. But you delivered. I will give you. I'll give you that. That's very good. We're up to episode 38 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby podcast already. Let's get into the rugby weekend with our cheers and jeers from the weekend, mate. And it's actually me to cheers this week. And my cheers for you is mascot races. The NPC final in Wellington served up just one of the great rugby moments where I think it was a dozen or maybe 14 mascots from all the provinces, NPC teams, Heartland teams lined up. It was a bit of a rogues gallery of mascots, and ultimately it was won by a cleaver wielding gentleman by the name of Barry the Butcher, who's from one of the Heartland provinces, I think. But it had everything. It had trash talking, had illegal taking out, some questionable tackles off the ball. It was just one of the great things of rugby, mate. There should be more of it, honestly.
One of the mascots got a really early start and then finished nowhere.
Yeah.
The other thing is
the seagull from Auckland absolutely jumped at the start. And I reckon finished second last at best.
He did what a seagull would do. And then the winner looked to me like Jamie Wall.
True.
And also he had the advantage of running barefoot, I think. Everyone else had weird, strange
big,
shoes.
oversized feet. Exactly.
Most of the mascots, they had to keep their head on because that was a problem for some of them. They were very slow.
There was an illegal tackle at one point and a head did come off. That was great. It was fantastic. What do you got to jeer me with?
Like often I do, I got the cheers and the jeers wrong. It's like almost like you have your birthday and you think you're 1 year older than you are, and then you get to your birthday, you're confused. So I wrote mine up as cheers. I'm just going to switch them around to be jeers anyway.
Okay.
So match winner, the Bulls, center and captain David Creel bangs over the conversion to win the match at the death. I just want to jeer all of us people that, always have a fixation on good looks and striking mannerisms. Imagine David Creel, he calls up someone and says, "Hello, I'm Creel. I play rugby for a living." And Pearson says, "Oh my God, are you that leg-shredded, chiseled chin, matinee idol
rugby guy? Are you that guy who got his red card rescinded last week?"
No. I'm talking about the leg day, Jesse, and then he has to say, "No, I'm the other Creel. I'm the ordinary Creel." That's the state of our rugby fandom. Anyway, I do want to say I'm also wearing a Japanese jersey right now because they have the shortest and sharpest anthem. Anytime I watch the test involving Japan, I just come away thinking, wow, that's a short anthem. Love it.
And that's jeers.
Yeah. I have no jeers because I just was fixated on being cheerful.
So your jeer
Maybe I'm going to jeer myself for
getting your weeks wrong?
I'm going to jeer myself for liking the Rec, and it's it's almost insufferable. And I imagine a lot of people will hate me for liking it, but I just love the setting. I want to go to the Rec. Yeah. That's my new ambition.
Okay, cool. I'm going to jeers myself for falling asleep during that game and not completing my Super Saturday.
It was a good match, actually.
Oh, it was 2:30 in the morning. I couldn't last. It was too late. We do edge closer and closer to the next international window. The pre-November international was played over the weekend, in fact. So let's get into all of that right after this with this gentleman right here. The gods of podcast timing have worked beautifully for us once again, and we welcome back another of our favourite guests. He's been on the mic for so many wonderful games through the NPC New Zealand this season. And there he was, front and centre for the pre-November test in Yokohama between Japan and All Blacks. Please, Harry Jones, welcome back, the great Tony Johnson.
Tony.
TJ,
Hey,
welcome back. How you doing?
Great, mate. So much to unpack after your introduction, which I just sat here in your virtual green room and lapped up every minute of it. Firstly, I agree with what you say about the mascot race. It is brilliant, and there is always violence, which, it's about the only form of legalised violence in rugby these days. But I'll tell you a little story about a mascot, Steely Dan. So he was the mascot for Counties Manukau. The Counties Manukau Steelers, so named because of their proximity to the big Glenbrook Steel Works nearby, where a lot of great rugby players have worked over certainly the amateur era. And Steely Dan, the robot look, he was a terrific mascot, but he got very annoyed because they stopped taking him on tour. And he went on a protest one day in which he turned up for the game hammered. And he had preloaded. And at one point, we got a shot. They cut to Steely Dan just as he was parking the Tiger over the hoardings. That's my favorite. That's my favorite mascot moment.
Oh, that's fantastic!
Brilliant,
absolutely fantastic. How did you process the thrill of calling another test match over the weekend against the disappointment of not being able to call the mascot race in Wellington?
Yeah, that was just one of those days, wasn't it? And I remember last year I had a brilliant day in New Plymouth when I was there for the NPC final, which started off with me lying in bed watching New Zealand beat Ireland in the quarter final. And then afterwards going to New Plymouth, where it was a magnificent day. And I don't know if you've ever seen the setting there where you've got the Maunga, Mount Taranaki behind it. It is one of the great sites in provincial rugby. And I thought that was like the perfect day for me. If I couldn't be at the World Cup, at least I could watch it and then go and enjoy the NPC final. It was a little bit of a different setup at the weekend because of other bookings, etc. Someone decided that they had to play the NPC final immediately before the test in Yokohama, which meant that they didn't get a great turnout. It was a miserable day in Wellington too. But I don't think that should detract from what has actually been a really captivating NPC.
It has.
And one that I think has reconnected the provincial championship with rugby fans in New Zealand. And suddenly everyone's saying, you know what, I know that people saying it's not fit for purpose, or that was the CEO who said that, but we've got to keep this competition because there's still something really special about it.
I was going to ask you about that because it feels like it's really gone from strength to strength this year. And so how does New Zealand rugby really tap into the sudden momentum that's behind it all of a sudden?
Well, they might have to rethink things. What they were saying is that we simply can't afford to have so many teams. At the moment, we've got 14. But, woe betide anyone who tries to single out two teams and say, because what they've done, say, for example, Southland, they started off the season with a match against Otago, so they called it Stag Day. And it's just a reference to the mascot of Southland. And basically it was, we're going to have a party here. And so everyone came on, they loaded up the terraces and the people on the terraces loaded up. But it was a really great atmosphere. And to me, the success or the heartbeat of this year's competition has been in the provinces. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm from Tasman, and so I was thrilled to see the Ranfurly Shield go there, and that was a huge part of it.
Absolutely.
And drawing the biggest crowds that we've seen in Blenheim for decades, and in Nelson. And they something happened in Tauranga as well with the Bay of Plenty team. They were getting great crowds turning up there, and in Napier. And it's really only the main cities, which I suppose are spoiled because they've got Super Rugby teams, where you see those rather soulless, half-empty stadiums. So, they're going to have a think about things. But I think the message loud and clear is that the people still want this because it is really so much a part of the fabric of New Zealand and the history of New Zealand rugby.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like it was the defeat of the consultants this year, because I actually am convinced that some of the unions and as well as World Rugby are listening to consultants or data from people who are disappointed or are not into our sport. But in the French provinces, French départements, in the Irish schools, in Currie Cup in South Africa, and NPC, there's a spirit that's reawakening, and and I was trying to think about what it was. So I watched a lot of the games and listened to you commentate a lot of them, and I've enjoyed them. Part of it is I think the commentating is more relaxed and storytelling. The scenes of the crowds are hilarious. I don't know how to describe it. There's a lot of mullets going on. There's a lot of strange signs. There's people banging on the awnings and stuff, and the people climbing trees. Is it just maybe a nostalgia thing, and we kind of love the grassroots, or is it also the prospect of seeing like a Julian Savia and Brad Shields, kind of guys at the end of the career up against some really up and coming talents? I mean, what is the recipe going on here that's working for MPC?
Well, as Graham Henry would say, all of those things really, plus a few others. I think you're right. There's a nostalgia there. There's a bit of parochial pride in it. I think it's also kind of a bit removed from the white hotness of Test rugby, even Super Rugby. So you're absolutely right. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Harry, that it is more relaxed. We feel it. And so it probably is a slightly more relaxed style of delivery. There's a bit of fun about it. It's exciting because this year, with so many New Zealand players, like as in South Africa, plying their trade overseas, we've seen a more rapid elevation of players out of our under 20 group coming in this year, and it's been so exciting. And I'll take, for example, a guy named Ollie Mathis playing for Waikato. Now, obviously, South Africa, the idea of the hybrid player with Quacker Smith, a magnificent sevens player who's become this sort of every parts man in rugby. Ollie Mathis, everyone is saying, is this our guy? He's a guy who, he's not very big, but he plays massively as a flanker. But someone's gone, if this kid stays at flanker, either we have to put 20 kilograms on him or he's just going to get crunched. And so they play him on the wing. And so he brings, like Quacker, he brings a lot of forward attributes to the wing. Let's face it, all backs now have to be able to rip the ball out of the breakdown and make tackles and things like that. And so that's been part of the excitement of it as well. Just new talent coming through, some old-fashioned values, a bit less stress about the whole thing. Because you don't feel like, the economy, as Eddie Jones would have you believe, is going to rise or crash on the success of the national team.
Not life or death,
and so it's just a reminder of how good it can be. But also, the footy's been good too. It's been
that's it.
Really good rugby.
That's it. And there's always been a freedom to competitions like this. There's always been a freedom to it, and it was the case when they played the NRC for 6 or 7 seasons in Australia. They're just being slightly off Broadway is enough for players to have a bit of freedom, coaches to be willing to try new things, commentators to have a bit of fun, crowds to get into it, and the whole spirit of the tournament and the competition just makes for a fantastic occasion, a fantastic competition to get into. And it's long may it continue.
And another thing that happened this year, first of all, we had some players from clubs in England, for example, a couple of the clubs that had fallen over coming out and looking just for something different to play here. That brought something. And we had, I think, sort of 14, 15 Australian players playing. And personally, I think that's a good thing. And the shining example really was Tane Edmed, who, no one was going, what's an Aussie doing playing in our competition or anything like that. People were going, well, this guy's brought something. And I think there's also a sense at a time when Australian rugby is just trying to, regroup and rebuild and just re-establish, that it's got to have been good for him to play at a higher level than anything he might have been playing in Australia below Super Rugby level at this point in time. So that was another really positive thing that came out of it. Except that we didn't call him Tane because of the spelling of the name. Tane, yeah. And they started calling him Tane on day one. And I suppose you'll go back to being Tane when he goes back, or now that he's back in Australia. But I think he got a bit of a kick out of that as well. And that's an acceptance thing.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, sorry, I'm just going on a bit here, but a few years ago, one of my favourite places in New Zealand to do rugby is a place called Whakarua Park in Ruatoria, which is a very remote ground on the East Cape in Ngāti Porou country. It's a very spiritual part of New Zealand, and Ngāti Porou East Coast, they have had once upon a time, they were the team that never won anything. And in the last 20 years, they've won, 2 or 3 titles, and it's a fantastic day to go there, because they come from far and wide, and there was a calling of people of the Ngāti Porou iwi to come back and play for their province. But in the middle of it all came this Irish guy called John Semple, and you could see him out there because the team was predominantly, if not all, Māori. And in the middle of it all, here's this guy with the Irish suntan. Basically everyone's got dark glasses on because of the reflection of Johnny Semple's legs, but he became known as Hone Semple, and again, it was just a lovely little chapter.
I took it the same way on Tane Edmed. I started watching NPC specifically because of Tane, because I was one of his big backers, for about a year now. I've been taking all kinds of grief by the Aussies, saying this is the one I think that's more the prototype for Joe Schmidt. He's a tough guy.
Mostly because you started it as a piss take, but sure.
Not really. I just had to position it that way so I wouldn't get too reviled. But I wrote an article early and I said, you can learn a lot from someone how well they play when you're losing. It's ridiculous how people get caught up in the winning. It's like, otherwise, so Springboks, there's 11 Sharks. There's 0 Lions. Lions are doing much better than the Sharks. So it's not about the winning. You get caught up in that. But I watched Tane, and I watched every match I could on North Harbour, and I found myself getting interested in the competition as a whole. So I just kind of found my way, working my way in there. I liked the different strip, the socks, the jerseys. I enjoyed the sights and sounds. And then I started looking at geography, like, oh, where are they from? And so it was Bay of Plenty. What does that mean? And then I saw the mascot steamers, and I thought, well, that must be a steam engine or a steam. No, it's actually the steam from the volcano. I found myself getting captivated. Is there a way New Zealand could market this more? Because it's really excellent times for the US, for example, which like prime time. And I find people who watch the NPC really get into it. You're watching the future All Blacks, or you're watching the All Blacks hanging on, the old All Blacks.
Yeah. It's an interesting point, because one of the great things, or one of the things we've been able to enjoy in the times that I've been to South Africa, is you always can turn on and watch it there, the NPC. You can watch it when you're in Australia too, a lot of the time. It's, if you want to talk about it as a product, it certainly has some appeal, but I think, it helps. Obviously, you've become interested in the history of it, and that is actually part of it. And it's very hard to market that sort of history, I guess, offshore. But I think, what it has said, and the risk of repeating myself, is it's said to New Zealand rugby that there's still an appetite for this. There's still an appeal. And at a time, too, where people are sort of starting to question what is Super Rugby anymore. Because when it started, it was the great leap forward into professionalism. And we had these new entities, but we had these rock star players, the Cullen Lormu players like that, the pitched battles between the Blues and the Sharks, or the Crusaders and the Brumbies. And it's kind of, lost its way a bit, and people are looking for something new. And there are people saying, look, is Super Rugby what we need? A lot of people would like to go back in New Zealand and just have an NPC with all the rock stars, the All Blacks playing in it. I'm not sure, though, whether that would generate the sort of global interest and the income that Super Rugby does, which, Super Rugby is a very huge component of the TV deal. It would take some clever marketing to do that, but it is one of those things where if you take the time to watch it and find out a little bit about it, then you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. And
how did Ed get there, by the way? Was that a design? Was it Joe Schmidt behind that, or was it just a simple agent thing?
No, I don't think Joe had anything to do with it. My understanding of it is that again, Harbour had I think they'd lost a player, maybe gone off overseas. That there was a new lad, Oscar Collar, that they brought in last year, but they sort of felt that he still wasn't quite ready to be the navigator of the team. And this is it's a bit of an issue in New Zealand rugby at the moment, where kids, the way they're coached at school, aren't necessarily coming out of school with all the skill set required to be that really important game engineer or navigator or whatever you want to call it. And so you end up with guys like Ruben Love or Stephen Pedal-Feta. They put them to fullback so that they can see how things are panning out in front of them and learn how to run the game then. And then move, hopefully in time, move back into the number 10 jersey. So we are short of really good, and hence this, I think, rather extraordinary and highly contentious decision by the Crusaders to get James O'Connor into the mix for next year. And that's a whole different area of conversation. But it's just a reflection of the fact that at the moment, with the likes of Mo'unga playing overseas, some other, good number 10s, we're a bit short. And so he was a great fit because he brought something to the team. But I think, hopefully he'll take something home that he's picked up as well. And he said he loved playing with the likes of Sean Stevenson, guys like that, who are just so talented. And it kind of freed something up in him and gave him the confidence and I think we saw the capabilities of this guy probably to a degree that we haven't seen before. And I just hope that when he goes back to Australia, he's allowed to be that player next year in Super Rugby.
It would certainly be a case, Harry, that the states in Australia have said, righto, we need to get some more game time into these couple of guys. Can we get them into the NPC somewhere? So the Brumbies sent Ben O'Donnell to Hawke's Bay, for example. There's numerous different examples of it across the board. So you certainly couldn't rule out the Waratahs being behind Ed going to Harbour, but the interesting part of that is that they're obviously going through a coach change as well. So it may well have been agent led, and the opportunity came up, and he's gone to New South Wales and said, "Hey, I can actually go and play some pretty decent football for 3 months rather than, kicking footballs around Eastwood in Sydney."
Yeah, and Harbour had the best attack in the NPC in the actual round robin part of the tournament, and it didn't come just from Sean Stevenson. It was definitely a Tane and Sean kind of tandem, it looked good. And Brett, you've been beating the drum on more game time for Aussie playmakers, and Aussie game managers. A guy like Noel Osio just doesn't get enough game time compared to a Marcus Smith, or the Premiership or the top 14 sort of just gives them a lot of opportunities. Tony, I'm fascinated by the idea that the All Blacks don't have these, I've always thought like 10s, the fly-offs, the first 5/8s are the quintessential Kiwi expression of rugby, just so many, churn them out. And now we're in a weird phase where there's a bit of a depth hollowed out. I was looking back at 2019 in the semifinal loss, and I was looking at the bench for the All Blacks, and I was attracted to it because it had almost like a bomb squad. It had Sonny Bull Williams, Sam Kane, Jordy Barrett, TJ Perenara. Patrick Tupoloto was the backup guy. Now some of those guys are being either thrust into starting roles, in the Rugby Championship this year. And there's this feeling of where's the depth? Is it just all going offshore? Is there not being enough produced? How do you see this going forward for the All Blacks? Because All Blacks are not supposed to be just losing finalists or semi-finalists. Obviously, the story of New Zealand is to be on top.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's to do with, everyone needs a good number 10. You can't win something like Super Rugby or the T14 or, the the English Championship or United Rugby Championship. You can't win any of those without a good number 10, and they don't, fall out of the sky, these guys. Right. And so they are a sought after commodity. I take your point. I mean, even go back to 2007 Rugby World Cup, which was obviously a pretty disappointing chapter in New Zealand rugby. But look what you had there. You had Dan Carter as your first choice. You'd have Nick Evans, who probably at that time would have walked into any team in the world as the backup. And you also had Luke McAllister there as well.
True.
It's just at this time. But, they are looking to rebuild it. There is a massive debate going on at the moment where you've, Damien McKenzie, who's been given every opportunity this year, and really he started out as a fullback, and he hasn't nailed it.
Right.
We saw sort of evidence of that at the weekend. For all his mercurial brilliance, there are still lapses there.
There's still question marks.
Yeah, and so it seems having under the previous regime felt that Beauden Barrett was the best option at fullback. They're going to go back to Bodie. In the meantime, they're hoping that Stephen Perofeta and Ruben Love are two young guys that are going away in the mix. They can transform them to be very, very effective at the back, that one of them at least could become a good number 10. And there's still this undercurrent that, and Scott Robertson is not going to let it lie, that he wants Richie Mo'unga back in the mix, either coming back to New Zealand or maybe bending the rules to allow him back into the All Black frame. So that's a space we're going to have to watch. As I say, Razor does not miss a single opportunity to bring it up, I'm sure. But a while ago, it was, we were all worried about locks. Where are we going to go when Whitelock and Metallic go? Signs are that maybe we've got quite a good young crop of locks coming through. Then at one stage, where are all the props? When you're a small populace like New Zealand, and sometimes you have these you go through these facets where suddenly we haven't got a good number 12, or we haven't got a good. You just got to, either develop someone or hope someone comes out of the mix.
Or need Smiley Barrett to make more sons and grandsons.
Where are all our 10s? Well, they're playing fullback currently. It really feels like the final was the NPC final was an instant classic. Going to overtime. Wellington get up with a penalty goal in pouring rain in the second half of overtime. I mean, it didn't look great maybe on TV, but it actually feels like it was just a fantastic final to wrap up what had been a fantastic season.
Yeah, and I suppose typical of finals. Sometimes they side. I mean, edged Waikato and I was lucky enough to be doing that Canterbury Bay of Plenty game, which was just a marvellous occasion. It was a little bit different. Yeah. It had a different feel about it, the final, but there was still drama. The extra time thing, and just one of those things. A bit sad that someone had to lose it, but that's what NPCs are made of. It's incredible to think. This competition's been going since 1976, and Bay of Plenty were actually the first team to win it back in 1976, and they hadn't made the finals only came in 1992, but they'd never made the big show. They'd never made a final, and they finally got there. It would have been nice for them to see them, but take the next step forward. But yeah, it was a tough match.
Yeah,
tough one to lose, but in the end, someone had to lose it, and as Richard Watt, the coach, said, well, sometimes that's the way the mop flops.
One of the great moments, Harry, was they started overtime, and the referee, was it Angus? Maybe was the referee.
Yeah, Angus. Yeah. That's not a great name for a referee.
It's not. It's not.
He's a lovely guy, Angus.
Yeah,
he's worked in the media. He worked in radio, but I think Angus, he should have changed his name by now to Angus Definitely.
Yeah. Referee maybe. Yeah. Referee maybe.
Yeah.
He pulls the two captains together, Harry, and says, "Now, so overtime, extra time is what I'm going to say. We're going to play extra time. It's 2 periods of 5 minutes." And both captains looked at each other and went, oh, is it not just Golden Point? Like, so they just actually know how it was supposed to be played. So
that's a perfect Rugby 2024 moment when none of us actually know what rules are being applied at any one moment.
Yeah.
Wait, are we contesting lineouts or not?
Yeah. So they both had to go back to their teams and go, no, it's not Golden Point. We're 5 minutes each way.
Yeah, but that's also a little bit typical of New Zealand rugby.
Yes.
Oh, is that how we're doing it? Is it? Yeah. Okay,
yeah. Oh, okay. All right. No worries. We'll get on with it.
Yeah. And by the way, just mentioning the referee, one of the nicer moments too, I felt was we had the privilege of, for 2 games, having Angus Gardner here.
Oh, you did too, of course. Yeah.
Caught up with Angus in Nelson the day after the game, and he's a terrific bloke, and I think as good as any referee in the world. We love him here because he's got an empathy for the game, and I think he got a real kick out of it, refereeing the games here. But I think the players liked having him too, someone of his status. Which that was again just another a nice little moment. As I say, it was really good to be able to catch up with him after that. Well, it was a difficult game. I mean, it was the midweek Shield game, Auckland against Tasman, and the weather absolutely packed in, but didn't stop him from enjoying it.
No, and that's the great things about rugby at this level. You can just do things, a little bit differently. And look over there. There's a bloke who's played 100 tests, and there's a guy who's now done, 100 something Super Rugby games as well in the middle. So, long may it continue. Let's talk about the test on the weekend. Tony, did the ABs, and I suppose what I'm really asking is, did Scott Robinson really get what they and he needed out of a 64-19 win over Japan?
If they'd called the game off after 44 minutes, I'd say he would have been pretty happy with what he'd seen. But here we go again. It was just, I don't know, there's something, it's becoming a bit of a pattern with this team. And, okay, so you're up by close to 50 points or whatever. And so what do you do next? Do you keep everyone out there and put the foot on the throat and run away and win by 75 or 80? He opted, I guess, to keep some of those players in contention for the test at Twickenham coming up this weekend. Mass changes all at once. And we've seen it happen before. It doesn't just happen with the All Blacks.
It was outrageous, Tony. He sent 6 replacements on at the same time. This can't be allowed to stand. This is
I know.
This is outrageous.
Who started that?
Oh, I can't believe they've been allowed to get away with that.
Yeah, it's hard to criticize a 10-try win, but that 44-minute to 78-minute lull will attract the hard to please All Black fans. Is it just a matter of the halftime? The orange is not working. Does Razor need a new hairdryer? His hair suggests that he might need a new hairdryer.
I don't know what's going on there.
But there's nothing happening on adjustments.
Excuse me, I'm not sure that you are in any position, Harry Jones. Okay.
No, don't do it. Oh.
Wait, hang on. I've got my dark glasses here. Back to looking at Johnny Semple's legs again. Whether that was just part of, what they did, bringing out guys that hadn't really played much together or all at once, or, did they button off and at the middle of that, Damien McKenzie, who'd been playing really well, suddenly dropped a couple of balls or a pass goes missing, and it sort of felt like it compounded itself. I suppose the fortunate thing is they did get it together at the end, scored a couple of late tries, and let's not forget that the last time the All Blacks had played Japan, they won it by, 38-31?
Yeah,
so
true.
Yeah. It's just, I suppose, the nature of the beast that people are probably going to focus more on minutes 44 to 78, when really the second quarter of that game, the All Blacks played some blinding rugby.
They did. They definitely did.
Yeah, they started well, Japan, but once the All Blacks started moving the ball, and you get these big forwards throwing these lovely little deft passes, and it was really quite good to watch. So look, in the end, I don't think it's going to matter too much. I don't think it's really part of some great thing. A greater malaise. I think that was just circumstances bringing on those guys, perhaps losing their way. We're going to find out where this All Black team is at over the next 3 weeks, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the season as a whole for the All Blacks, kind of looking at the different Southern Hemisphere teams and getting together an essay on what they need to look for up north. And I came away thinking it's not so much late game problems for All Blacks, it's more patchiness in general. That the good news is almost no one can still score as quickly in a hurry as All Blacks in a compressed period. Even at Ellis Park, when I was there, I was marveling at how much they could score so quickly. And so it's not so much, it's almost coincidental that it falls off at the end. It's just patchiness in general and not staying mentally obsessed or whatever you got to do for the full 80, which has always been one of the All Blacks' strengths, right? Is to beat the All Blacks, you got to like kill yourself, for 83 minutes, 84 minutes. Now there seems to be a foot off the pedal.
Yeah, and that's where teams like Ireland in particular will be looking to pounce. Yeah. And that's going to be the big challenge. Look, I think, all up, I know there's, some disappointment. Okay, so they lost 2 games to South Africa, but this is a Springbok team that is, it's a fantastic team. I think it's, and I've been watching Springboks since 1970. I think it was the first time I watched the series. And this is probably the best Springbok team I've ever seen, just in terms of their strength and depth, their status, just their, and I hate to use the word because it's just being used ad nauseum about the All Blacks, and I don't even know what it means really, but there is a bit of an aura about the Springboks at the moment. And to come away losing those 2 games by a pretty narrow vote, like what was it, 10-6 or 10, or I can't remember now.
18-12,
yeah. And the second one in particular game, they probably should have won. Much as you don't like to lose test matches, you think, well, are they that far off it? And then, managed to keep the Bledisloe Cup, winning home and away. I think there is some signs that they are starting to knit this team together. I wouldn't say there's any great innovation going on, but it's more about their efficiencies. There's still some question marks over who's best in what position, but I think that they are starting to get on a bit of a curve. I wouldn't be dancing too much on the grave of All Black rugby just yet. I think this team has still got places to go. Whether it can, it'll never be the same ascendant force that it was for a while, sort of between, I don't know, 2011, the years either side of that. I just don't think it's humanly possible because rugby is such a great standard across the board now. Yeah. But I still think if they can continue to build this, to mold things, get their decision making right, and just clear up those sort of mental little fades that they seem to go through, I still think this can be a really good All Black team. Yeah. Just got to bear in mind that what they've taken on in the next few weeks is, well, any team I think will struggle to win all 3 of those.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like 5 tests is a grueling tour by any measurement, and then England, Ireland, France, Italy to come. What does Scott Robertson need from those 4 games for the pressure, which is there still for it to ease up on him?
Yeah, it's hard to know what constitutes a pass mark when you start off with England, and then they have been a little bit stitched up. I think they've got a 6-day turnaround before taking on Ireland at the Aviva. Yeah. Ireland not having had a game the previous week, so that's difficult. That does mean they get an extra day off before they take on France. I don't know who agreed to the schedule, but boy, I think even the greatest of All Black teams would have their work cut out with an itinerary like this. I'm not trying to make excuses before the games have been played, because I think they, in isolation, they would be capable of winning all of those games. Yes. But when you bang them all together, that becomes a different matter. And we probably don't have building depth, but still don't have that incredible depth, for example, that the Springboks have got at the moment, which was how the All Blacks in the Graham Henry era, for example, were able to win their Grand Slams, because they were able to change the team out week to week. I'm not sure this team, and still be very good, I'm not sure this team has that luxury still just yet.
If a guy was just sitting around with some extra bucks, maybe some travel funds stashed away in a wallet, and he was picking which All Black match to go to.
That rules out anyone on this call, for the record.
Let me just rephrase that. Which All Black test should I go to?
Well, I don't know. You see, like yourself, Harry, I'm a tooth man. I love my food, and it's fascinating to learn that such a vital component of Cajun cooking is actually named after a Springbok halfback. I didn't know that. But yeah, so I'd probably go to Paris, but that's because I know where to get some good tucker there. No, I think
there's revenge on both sides there, right? So there's revenge for the pool defeat to France. I haven't thought about that. We've been focused so much on the Ireland match with all this kind of bad blood.
I wasn't thinking about the rugby. I was thinking about
just the fun.
Yeah. No.
Well, the other side of that game is it'll be the only chance for the All Blacks to face a first choice French side, won't it?
Well,
it won't be next year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that hurts me beyond belief.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the commitment? Where's the commitment to the top end of the game? I hate that.
Yeah.
But no, to get back to Harry's question, it has to be the Ireland test because there's so much needle. There's such an edge there. And I've seen that change ever since that win in Chicago. It used to be you go to Ireland, you were guaranteed a great time, no matter what the score was.
Yeah.
You know, expectations are different now that Ireland has had success. They expect to beat the All Blacks, and things can get a little bit niggly when it doesn't go according to plan. I've sort of seen it's still, but it's still, one of the great experiences to go to a test in Dublin, to be in Ireland for a week, to be in Dublin for a week. I've had, and so to me, that's the one. I think that all of the neutrals are going to be watching because they know the story about the Peter O'Mahony sledge and what he got back at the end of that World Cup match, and obviously our good friend Johnny Sexton. They may be gone, but the words haven't been forgotten. So
no.
Well, it's
going to be tasty.
The Irish are elbowing their way into the pub of world. Who's the best kind of conversations right now. That chatter is really spicy with the Irish. I think they're really good at talking, and they're good at needling. They haven't produced the win so far, but to me it feels a lot like they want to be considered right there. And I don't know, maybe Ireland would be favored, wouldn't they, in this match?
Oh yeah, particularly I think when you do factor in the 6-day turnaround, because I think that that is a consideration. It's not an excuse; it's a consideration. And what's happened in Irish rugby is wonderful. And the way they've organised the game around the 4 provinces, so that they are they're channeling their elite players into these teams. I think Warren Gatland was a guy. I know he had a vision for that. They've had some great coaches, and I think what Andy Farrell has been able to do with this team, when you consider that his background, he's a rugby league man, phenomenal. And it's funny because I'm sure you've over the years run into Jerry Thornley, the great writer for the Irish Times, and Jerry's one of my favourite people in rugby.
Great guy, yeah.
And after the game where they got beaten by Wales in Wellington 2011 World Cup, and I caught up with Jerry afterwards, and the poor guy was almost in tears. One, because he'd been having such a great time, and because Ireland were going home at the quarterfinals, he was having to go home as well. But he was also lamenting the fact that we've had this great generation of players, O'Driscoll, O'Gara, O'Connell, all these fantastic players, and he goes, we're going to end up with nothing. And the fact that those players moved on, and this whole new generation of great players has come in, and they are right up there.
Oh yeah.
I still think it's the Box at the moment because they've got the silverware to show it. And I mean the Six Nations, but Ireland, no question, they are top 2, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, watching some generational players now. I mean, they're not the household yet, like the O'Garas and the O'Driscolls, but Caelan Doris is as good a loose forward as there is on the planet. It's very difficult to look past him. I was thinking also that I might want to miss the French All Black clash because those collars, they might just do me in. They're going to be so similar. Have you seen the French? They've unveiled.
They're wide. They're very wide.
Same designer, I think.
Yeah, from the country that gave us, I don't know, all these great, fashion designers. And
Givenchy.
Christian Dior.
Yeah,
exactly.
Now we have monster
Tony,
colors.
we present the latest French rugby jersey. Yeah.
Do we get the pleasure of your voice over the next month? Are you making the trek, or are you setting the alarm early?
We're not. So I did last weekend. I've got France test, but sadly, it will be in Auckland, not Paris. Paris. And Nisbo's doing the two in between the Ireland and England games. So no, we're not going on the tour, and I'll leave it at that. It's disappointing for sure.
Yeah.
Because this is, and then of course they end up, the other thing too about this tour is that they end up playing Italy, who it can't be sneezed at.
Yeah, true.
Like Japan, they've actually discovered some ambition at international level. I think they were always the guys who were happy to be at the top table, or like the guest that you'd invite to a potluck dinner, and they'd turn up wearing a really nice suit but forgot to bring a bottle of wine. Now they've got something about them, and this wonderful fullback that they have. So even that game, you have to, to be mindful of it. And it's being played at Turin, which is a new stop, and in this fantastic new stadium that they've built there. And of course, the home of
Juventus Stadium, isn't it?
Yeah. So what a treat that would be if I was there.
You get a few things wrong against Italy nowadays, they can make you pay. It's not the same kind of team. Yeah, absolutely.
Mate, it's been fantastic to catch up as it always is. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your time on a public holiday in New Zealand. But we hope that the next month can be a suitable end to what has been an enjoyable rugby season for you.
Well, yeah, I just hope we see some great action. I could do without the controversy. Let's just hope it's free of that. The chances are virtually zero. Someone's going to end up crying. We know that. But no, fellas, it's always a great pleasure. I love your work, both of you, and any time. I'm always really willing and able.
Thanks, Tony. Always love when I hear your voice on the comms. I go, I'm in good hands. You're gonna rugby in the end is a story. It's not as statistical as cricket. It's not you can't break it down as easily. It's just a story. Every game is its story, and I love the way you tell it.
Love it.
We'll talk soon, mate. Good calling.
Okay.
Cheers,
guys.
You want to?
This is the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones, and mate, so good. It's always good to have Tony Johnson back on the pod.
Oh, I love Tony. Tony's one of those guys that he can really just present the game to you, and you just sit back and relax and enjoy it. Plus, as a guest, he's just so great to come on and tell stories. I've always thought that rugby that's all about telling stories, and he's got the best ones. So
absolutely, he's seen a lot in a wonderful broadcasting career. So it's just a joy to have him back on the pod from time and again, and to genuinely call him a friend of the pod, because he always says yes. He just always says yes. The weekend wrap, mate. Round 6 of the Irk sees Glasgow jump to second after a win over the Stormers in Stellenbosch. But the biggest question from that game is, how long did the free beer last?
I think that the players got too much of the beer, and also that the jerseys we were using made us seasick. Also, I think sometimes if you have money, we've got to stop on this. We've got to stop on jerseys. Those Stormers jerseys were terrible, and I said to you on social media, I think we need to revisit the worst of the Irk, because that was garbage. Conversely, the Glasgow away strip, outstanding. It was pretty cool. I just would want to never use those jerseys again because of bad luck. It was one of the worst matches I've seen. I know Glasgow's a good team and all, but we had plenty of ball. But it was wasted by Mani Lubbock and Warwick Galant running around like drunken sailors. They were hiding behind their own players. Every move was an obstruction. It looked like we could have been called for more penalties.
Running around in circles at one point.
Just running around. Like one time they were running backwards. I don't know what was going on. But yeah, John Dobson's lost the plot. I keep hearing he's lost the change room. We got to look elsewhere for some new ideas. I love John. I think he should stay as director of rugby because he's a Western Province man through and through, and he's beloved, and he's a good guy to show up at a function and have a poem and raise a glass. But I don't think he's got the ability to harness these incredible attacking players. I mean, with the talent we have, we should be running over people. Yeah. And also, but I will say that the setting was beautiful. Stellenbosch is
it looked so
one
good.
of the great small towns in the world. Looking around, just coffee bars, bookstores, the people. If you just want to spend a rugby, I don't know, a pilgrimage, go to Stellenbosch.
Yeah,
it looks towns so around it, Parle,
blue sky, car park full of cars, just beyond the grandstand. Like it was so cool. Leinster are 6 points on top of the table after their win over the Lions. The Lions dropped into fourth after that 24-6 loss at the Aviva. One win now between the Bulls in third and the Sharks in ninth. So it's getting tight. The standout score there to me on the weekend, Cardiff come from 19-0 down at halftime to beat Ulster 21-19.
Yeah, there was some good matches. I thought the
You'd
reddish
be annoyed if you were sitting at the wrong end, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I thought the reddish golden Lions, who lost to Leo Leinster Lions, actually showed in the first 40 how to play Leinster. It was 6-10.
Yeah.
It actually could have been a little bit better. 6-5.
Yeah, they made Leinster work for it.
That's the way to play these Toulouses and Leinsters. You've got to restrict the field. The minute you start to play, let's play crazy and I'll match you and play NBA, you're gone. The other match that I thought was really hilarious was the Sharks just running amok. They were doing, I think, what John Dobson wanted the Stormers to do, but there were moments where Williams and Fossey were unplayable, and Munster was just, grasping at shadows, trying to tackle ghosts. It was over.
Trying to tackle ghosts. It's a good way of putting it. It was round 6 of the Premiership as well. Bath literally put me to sleep at 2:30 in the morning, beating Sale 40 points to 13. But they go top after Leicester's 32-29 win over Saracens. So
Leicester
Tigers
is
are now
rolling.
They are on a real roll, aren't they?
They just keep winning just enough.
I saw Cheika's post-match conference, immediate on-field interview at the end of the game, though, and he's still annoyed by something. He's just going to go through this whole year annoyed or aggrieved about something. So,
but even in his annoyance, he's a more mellow Michael.
Yeah, true.
Also, I want to make an observation right now. Andre Liebenberg is a great captain of Leicester Tigers. Just one of those guys. He'll never be a test player probably, but he's just a wonderful rugby player. Andre Liebenberg, captain. And then there's Andre. And I literally think that Hanro looks like Andre's big brother, or that he ate Andre. It looks so similar to me now. I cannot get this image out of my head. I cannot unsee it.
Julien Montoya, another barnstorming game as well. So the Tigers are equal second with Bristol, who beat Northampton 31-23. And there's a clear gap now between top 4 and the rest of the competition. It's like 5 or 6 points between.
Thank you. I like that better. I like it when the separation occurs in the log.
Yeah. I've forgotten who's who on in there. Saracens 23 in 4th. Harlequins beat Exeter to go to 5th, but they're on 18 points. So there's a real demarcation there between top 4 and the rest. Round 8 of the top 14 in France. Bayonne are now 3rd after their 49-38 win over Lyon. Their first win in Lyon in a good number of years, as I understand.
They're looking good, Bayonne.
Yeah. 11th place Montpellier beat 4th place La Rochelle 16-0.
That's embarrassing.
They just do not
to be nulled in the top 14 is embarrassing because no one's playing defense.
Do not care about playing away from home. And evidently neither did Toulon, because they were thumped 57-5 by Toulouse.
That was a weird match. I watched that because it was delaying my Harry index until that was done. I couldn't actually, in good faith, And I was able to do my Harry Index at halftime because it was over. But I'll say this, and again, I'm not a DuPont man. DuPont is a wonderful player, but he had a very poor first half, and it was none of that was because of him. And he got turned over, he got held up, he got pushed back, and there was these other players. And the thing is, you watch Toulouse, and they have like all 23 players are test players. Like the whole thing is just, it's ridiculous. So everyone can have an off game because it doesn't really matter. Because then Jack Willis does this, and Miafu does that, and Blair Kinghorn saves the day. And like, what is this?
It's the Toulouse barbarians it's becoming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Question without notice about the Harry Index. For how much longer are you going to persist with leaving the Blues in second place with an asterisk next to them?
So the Harry Index, I don't know all the workings and algorithms of the Harry Index because I have to consult with them every week.
What's the terminology? Offensively subjective? Is that what you call it?
It's changed. It's highly suggestive and subjective, yet modest and utterly objective. But the Harry Index does try to imagine things in the future time, in the fullness of the season, when everyone's at their strength and best. Would they be able to? And so the Tigers, Toulouse, they're challenging, but I have to give. All these teams had a rough patch at the beginning, whereas the Blues really finished on a high. So I've got to give them credit for if we started all over again, I think they would be good still.
Let me give you an analogy. In a motor car race, the guy running in the car running in second and pulls into the pits and sits there for 7 months does not maintain second position whilst the rest of the cars are out there circulating.
That's why the Harry Index is so brilliant, though. I've compared, there's only one other index out there that I've looked at. It says top 50 in the world by Flow Rugby. And they had the Blues in the top 10 as well, but the same logic. But
I can understand you wanting to keep them there, but I don't think you can keep them at second for as long as you have.
It's not a form guide, though. It's definitely an imaginary thing if we had a global season. Yeah, I'm trying to do that for everyone. Yeah.
Fair enough. We'll be back with Games of the Week later in the week, so make sure you are all subscribed and following as needed and wherever you need to. Biggest headlines of the last 7 days, mate. The one that stood out to me was the Middle East grand plans for rugby revealed, with 3 Gulf nations vying to host the 2035 Rugby World Cup. It was reported in the Daily Mail late last week, and 3 Gulf nations, but also Japan. So it was actually coming from the president of Asian Rugby, and the whole premise of the argument was the Gulf nations are driving the emergence of Asia as a rugby superpower.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of feels like there's shifting ground toward international rugby being played in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar.
Yeah. My article that just came out on The Roar is about this topic. So go there and read my thoughts. But it's everyone. But it's obviously it's a money story. All the 3 candidates, and Brett Robinson should get it. But both of the leading candidates are saying the same thing: is we have to get more money in the game.
Yep.
They claim that it has to do not just with where it's played in terms of the ambiance and atmosphere for the people who go, but it's the big ticket, blue chip sponsor,
the experience drive.
So Brett Robinson's been voted in favor of the U.S. World Cup because he doesn't care about how well USA does in the World Cup. It's that's where you could get, if you can design it well, massive deals and get to the billions and try to catch up to the other teams, the FIFA. But I don't know. I have misgivings about it because I think we need some governing or limiting principles in the drive for money, because sometimes you can get what you think you wanted and then you get there and you're like, oh, I didn't like this.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's gonna raise questions, no doubt. But it's certainly interesting to see it framed the way it was in that.
It's a real thing. I think everyone has to pay attention.
Yeah, for sure. Final thoughts of the week?
Oh, no, I'm just ready. I'm ready for the next set of test hype. I want the hype to continue. I really think I'm a creature of hype and I enjoy it. I'm enjoying this Ireland All Black thing as well. I'm really thinking I might lean towards going to Dublin, but then I'm also going to go to Murrayfield as well. So I don't know. I'll have to check our balance.
Our balance?
Fudge.
Yeah, exactly.
Move around.
A reminder that that our mate Jeff Parks's book, and I'm holding it up there on screen for our podcast listeners, A Year in the Life and Death of the Melbourne Rebels, is released this Tuesday, October 29, but it's available to pre-order now in paperback and on ebook via all the major book selling platforms, Amazon, Kobo, Booktopia, Waterstones, all of them as well. And your review on The Roar is out this week?
29th. So the day of release, the review dropping. Yep.
Very good.
And I just tell everyone, plot reveal. It's a really good book. Get it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a really good book. That is then episode 38 of the 8-9 Combo done. Check the show notes for the links to the 8-9 Combo on Twitter and YouTube. Leave us a rating or a review wherever you can, and turn your notifications and your auto download settings to on. Harry and I remain on the socials in our usual places, at Harry Baldy Jones and at BMC Sport. You'll find links again for that, our socials and Harry's written work on The Roar a couple of times a month. And my weekly Australian columns on RugbyPass on the show notes as well. My Tom Wright profile is going up this week as well, as soon as I finish writing it. This is the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realise you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones. And we'll be back in your ears in just a few days' time with another edition of Games of the Week.